matches, as we all know, are planned, from the opener to the ref counting
1, 2, 3.
It's done this way to make sure that the match is properly choreographed to avoid boredom from the fans, and also to make sure that each move is executed safely in the ring. Without the cooperation from each wrestler, the whole match could turn into a complete farce. Wrestlers need to take time in the ring to invest the audience into the match. It especially comes harder when the other wrestler doesn't wish to cooperate and has other intentions in mind. When this happens, it's called a shoot, and whether it involves stiff blows to your opponent to intentionally harm them or changing the planned finish of the match, they are in it for themselves and moving away from the planned story. In this video, we're going to look at 10 occasions where these turn of events happened. Regarded to be one of the strangest shoots in wrestling, both babyface Lex Luger and the monstrous lunatic Bruiser Brody were set to battle it out in a steel cage match. These cage matches though back in the day were a lot different. There is no such thing as escaping through a door or climbing out from the top. That was unheard of back then, especially for babyfaces and top stars like Lex Luger. The objective was simple: use the cage as a weapon and win by pinfall or submission. Everything seemed normal in the match and both were selling like crazy for each other. Typically, the match was booked so that Luger would have a babyface heroic return after being beaten senseless by Brody. Things started to take an awkward turn as Brody, without no warning, began to stop selling for Luger. His punches, and even throwing him in headfirst into the cage, didn't do anything. It was only until minutes into the match that Luger felt that something wasn't right. The match carries on and Brody is beating Luger senseless, whilst any offense from Luger is clearly ignored. Luger is really confused on what to do and keeps looking at the ref, probably wondering what the hell he should do. Even referee Bill Alfonso had no clue what was actually happening. In the end, Luger had enough of Brody's antics and climbed out of the cage. Well, I say climbed, he more or less jumped out of there. This was led with more confusion as Brody's arm was raised as the winner. The crowd was clearly left confused over what had happened, and more importantly so was Luger. There was still no explanation given by Brody's actions. As after the match, Luger had asked him whether he did anything wrong. He simply replied no. Since Brody passed away in 1988, there may never be a clear explanation as to what had happened in that ring, and have only generated a number of theories. Goldberg was never known for his mat wrestling skills, nor for his promos. He was known to be a beast and obliterate his opponents in a matter of minutes and add numbers to his infamous streak. So why was this match so important? Regal at the time was nowhere near main event status, so he should have been a quick steamroll. Well, that was the plan, as Regal was on his way out of WCW to join the WWF, so they booked him in a quick squash match against Goldberg. The thing is, guys like Regal had worked hard to be where they were, and it was obvious that he didn't like people like Goldberg. They were given bigger opportunities in just a matter of weeks. So the theory went that Regal wanted Goldberg to work a bit harder for that win that night. During the match, Regal used a number of technical moves, and since Goldberg was only used to a few moves, that of his own, Regal seemed to look like the stronger and smarter one out of the two. Making their top star look like shit obviously didn't go down with management. Most people had thought that Regal had done this intentionally, but on an episode of Stone Cold Steve Austin's podcast, Regal still maintained that it was just a miscommunication between the two, and it had nothing to do with the shoot. New Jack is another guy who simply can't wrestle, but you can argue his gimmick is not to be the best wrestler, he's there to cause shock and controversy in pro wrestling. Well, when he heard that veteran NWA wrestler Gypsy Joe wanted to face him, he couldn't refuse. Now, Joe was in his early 70s, a man who had clearly seen the best of his days behind him. New Jack was unsure what the promoter had in mind for his match, as were clearly unmatched. Well, Jack explained to the promoter that he could either beat him to death or have some sort of comedy match and lose $1 value in his name. Since New Jack clearly doesn't do comedy in his matches, and told he was actually tough as nails, New Jack opted for the first option. Well, what seemed to start off as a pro wrestling match quickly turned real as Gyppo Joe started to no-sell his punches. New Jack then started to legitimately hit him with an aluminum bat, wrapped in barbed wire, and the hostile crowd soon realized that the violence was for real and started to shout racial abuse at him. This is of course New Jack, and he reciprocated with a few back, but nevertheless the promoter had to actually stop the match due to unnecessary roughness, which was odd since it was a hardcore match. Nevertheless, I'm sure New Jack wasn't welcome back to Tennessee anytime soon. In April 1991, the WWF and Japanese promotion Super World of Sports joined forces together for a show in Kobe, Japan called Wrestle Dream. The card featured some odd, never-before-seen matches, dream matches if you must, such as Randy Savage vs Jinichiro Tenryu and Hulk Hogan vs Yoshiaki Yatsu. The matches weren't seen as memorable though, but it was John Tenta, otherwise known as Earthquake, and Koji Katawa who would be remembered. The match pitted two former sumo wrestlers against each other. Some may not know, but before he took out the likes of Hulk Hogan in the early 90s, Tenta was a sumo wrestler. On the other hand, Kitawa was a yokozuna, which is regarded to be the highest rank in sumo wrestling. But again, this was not a sumo match. This was a wrestling match, and it seemed clear from the booking that Earthquake was going to come out as the winner. Well, needless to say, this didn't start off very well, as Koji immediately started the bout with a number of test of strength attempts. After this, they went into various lockups where Earthquake managed to take down Koji with quite some force. About 4 minutes into it, Koji just stopped caring about the match and refused to sell a number of moves, leaving Earthquake absolutely furious. Koji proceeded further to no sell, and both started staring each other, pointing fingers. They were at least ready to tie up again, as Tenta started screaming at him that this is pro wrestling. Koji then kicked the ref to get DQ'd, and allegedly after the match grabbed a mic and started ranting to the audience, telling them that wrestling is all fake and that he could beat Tenta in a real fight. Nobody could explain Koji's actions, but it was obvious that he was just childish, and due to his actions he was immediately fired from SWS. It's 1977 at Tokyo's Sumo Hall. In one corner you have Antonio Inoki, a living legend in the Japanese pro wrestling and founder of New Japan Pro Wrestling. In the other, the great Antonio, a man who looks homeless sporting banana trousers. He may not look like much, but he was a French-Canadian strongman and was quite famous at his time. One thing is for sure, the guy seemed like a certified nutter. Having these two in the squared circle didn't exactly create chemistry for a legendary match. No wait, it was legendary, but all for the wrong reasons. The great Antonio wasted no time at the start of the match and started stalking Inoki like a crazed bear, throwing him into the corner for good measure. With what seemed like no training was given to Antonio, he attempted a headlock and wouldn't let go, even with the ref threatening to disqualify him. His actions clearly pissed Inoki off. Then the no-selling happens. With a drop kick and even Inoki running into him at 90 miles per hour, Antonio doesn't budge an inch. Inoki then snaps and proceeds to hit him with a few open palm strikes to his face, takes him down and literally starts booting him straight in the face until Antonio isn't moving. Even when he came around, he was bloodied and punch drunk. Andre the Giant was legendary for his tolerance of alcohol. In fact, he admitted in 1992 on the David Letterman show that he once drank 119 beers in one session. In fact, fellow wrestler Mike Graham told on the Legends of Wrestling Roundtable show that Andre had in fact consumed 156 beers in one session. That's pretty much a standard size keg. So, saying that, how would you deal with a drunken giant in the ring? Well, when you have an opponent who is a legit tough guy and competed in many MMA shoots before, not so well. Akira was made a fool of by Andre by not cooperating with anything. When Akira would go to kick him, Andre would just stand there asking for more. Andre even at one point had a full Nelson on him, and at the time he weighed in excess of 500 plus pounds. This could have done some real damage to him. He then started to toy with him, thinking will he actually work the match? But when Akira kicked him fully, Andre didn't even flinch. At one point, Antonio Inoki came down to the ring, but Andre simply ignored him. After Andre was taken down by a leg lock, he showed the ultimate insult by laughing at Akira and asking him to cover him for the pin. The match was stopped by Inoki, and Andre was never invited back to Japan to wrestle for the promotion. Some say that this incident even led to the downfall of the company. The fans in the arena were disappointed, and the televised broadcast was never replayed again. Perry Saturn wasn't exactly given a good run in the WWF. After coming in as the Radicals with both Benoit, Malenko and Eddie, he was demoted to the Hardcore division. He was then given Terry Runnels as his manager and turned into some pimped version of Jamiroquai as a lower mid-card wrestler. Things would get even worse for Saturn after the infamous match with jobber Mike Bell. On an episode of WWF Metal, yeah, I can't remember this show either, Saturn legitimately started to beat the shit out of Bell after he executed a semi-botched hip toss. He initially thought that Bell had intentionally dropped him on his head. After doing so, Saturn threw an absolute hissy fit and proceeded to throw him straight out of the ring, to which Bell then landed straight headfirst on the mat below. Saturn didn't stop there though. It seems that he thought that hardcore rules applied and drove him straight back first into the steel steps. After teaching him a lesson in the ring, Saturn had his ass handed to him backstage by management, who were less impressed with how he handled the situation. As punishment, he was given the gimmick of talking to an inanimate mop, thus pretty much ending his WWE career. In a U-Shoot interview, Saturn admitted that he was in the wrong and, in his words, freaked out. He said he threw Mike Bell out of the ring to actually save him, as he was going nuts. On an episode of SmackDown in late 2004, Kurt Angle challenged contestants from the Tough Enough show to get in the ring with him. Chris Nowacki came up to the plate and was absolutely steamrolled by Angle, breaking his ribs in the process. What wasn't scripted is that Kurt asked another contestant to come in the ring and be the second person to get their ass handed to them. Daniel Puder, who was a winner of that season, stepped up, and after a bit of tussling, Puder gripped Angle's right arm and forced it into an awkward angle. He later admitted to trying to actually break it. Realizing what was going down, the referee did a quick 3 count with Puder's shoulders not even close to the mat. Angle of course was absolutely furious and gave him a few words. His actions didn't go well down with other wrestlers either, as at the 2005 Royal Rumble, Puder was punished for his actions and was given a thrashing from Benoit, Eddie and Hardcore Holly. Kurt Angle mentioned in a shoot that Daniel was stupid. He pinned himself by having his back flat on the mat for just a second and stated that since it was amateur wrestling, it should have been amateur wrestling rules, i.e. 1 count pin and submissions. Other than that, Daniel couldn't wrestle well and was not good on promos either. And because of this, Vince was disappointed in his performance and cut his contract from the guaranteed $250,000 to just $75,000. JBL and Blue Meanie's heat started way before their clash at ECW's One Night Stand. It started when the Blue Meanie was in the WWF with the Job Squad in the late 90s. He mentioned in an interview with the WWF that JBL was kind of an asshole because of his backstage bullying and hazing. Meanie returned to the WWE in 2005 for ECW's One Night Stand, and with a crimson mask. Confused backstage, Blue Meanie looked for answers, to which JBL had pointed out that he knew about his internet comment. For his actions, the WWE gave Meanie double pay for that night as an apology and created an angle out of it. During their match on SmackDown, Stevie Richards also wanted to get a little payback, and with a chair, he hit JBL so hard that it legitimately staggered him. New Jack again. This time it seems that New Jack has taken it too far. With Gypsy Joe, in some defense, Jack was told that he was tough as leather, and Gypsy Joe seemed to be an asshole with not selling anything at all, especially being a veteran wrestler who should have known to respect the business. With William Jason Lane, he was a green wrestler, which meant that he still was in training and not quite ring ready. Well, in a match between him and New Jack, Lane was giving New Jack a number of stiff shots to the face. It's unsure whether these stiff shots were intentional or not, because there doesn't seem to be any information on this guy, nor any aftermath interviews. Well, New Jack didn't take kindly to those shots and proceeded to retrieve a knife which was concealed in New Jack's pocket. This wasn't a gimmick weapon, but a real 8-inch blade. Jack then proceeded to stab the poor guy 9 times. I mean, f*** me, 9 times? I wouldn't stab a chicken on my plate that much. Now, this wasn't in front of a 20,000 seater stadium or anything. It was a promotion called Thunder Wrestling Federation, and it seemed that there was more staff in the building than fans. Still, I'm sure they were actually horrified in seeing a wrestler lying there in a pool of blood. Luckily this time he didn't get away with it, and he was arrested for aggravated assault and aggravated assault to commit murder. The whole incident was disgusting, and what's even more stupid is that the charges were dropped because New Jack actually promised to train him. Well, unfortunately for Lane, New Jack didn't keep that promise and he's not seen him since. Nothing happened after that but give New Jack more infamy. Well guys, this about wraps up this episode. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for 10,000 subscribers. I really couldn't do it without you. See you next time for some more wrestling content.